Hey guys, welcome to Hip Hughes History. You know what's on the exam? It's the Erie Canal. How do you not know about the Erie Canal? For goodness sake, we're going to do it right now, guys. Whether you're a kid in school struggling or you just cray-cray on the internet, we're going to go travel along New York State. So I think it's really important to set context, guys, about how difficult it is to get grain from the interior of the country, like western Pennsylvania and Ohio, to market on the eastern seaboard. And we really don't have a dominant kind of like trade capital on the eastern seaboard. You have New York, you have Philadelphia, you have Baltimore, and they're all doing okay, but nobody's dominating any kind of market because it's so darn expensive to try to get through the Appalachians and to travel with that grain. So most grains, and this is really one of the reasons for the Whiskey Rebellion. Remember that, guys, is what, 1796. So the turn of the century, right around then, people found it more profitable to turn their grain into whiskey than to try to take this high volume, cheap product and get it to the eastern seaboard. So that's an opportunity for capitalism. And there were previous ventures of trying to build a waterway. Remember, that's what a canal is. You put the water in the canal and the boat goes in the water. How about that? George Washington on the Potomac tried to build a canal towards the end of his life. The last 15 years, he hacked away at a canal, trying to go inwards to get into that agricultural belly of the United States so somebody could make some money. So now that we have the problem, all we need is someone to come up with a solution and to build it.
I got a mule and the name is Sal, 15 miles on the Erie Canal. She's a good old worker.
So in 1807, the Erie Canal is proposed by a dude by the name of Jesse Hawley, who was actually in debtor's prison because he was, a failed businessman trying to figure a way out to make money, taking a product like grain, wheat, and getting it to the eastern seaboard, and he had failed miserably. So he hooked up with a brother called Joseph Ellicott. If you live in Buffalo, you know Ellicott Square. Ellicott's from Batavia, but he sees really like this kind of economic opportunity. It's almost like he went on Shark Tank, and he's like, I got this great idea. We're gonna build a hole in the ground. We'll put water in it, and then the boats can go back and forth, and everybody will make money. And Joseph Ellicott's one of those guys with all of this capital, and he's like, wow, that's not a bad idea. I own a lot of land in western New York, and if this works, that land, that's the idea. So he gets that financial backing. All you now need is some political capital, and that's going to be in Governor DeWitt Clinton of New York State to put this harebrained scheme into effect. And that's what it was. People thought that this was cray-cray. People called it Clinton's folly, Clinton's ditch, and they thought it would never work. And I want you just to take a second to understand, even though it's just a ditch, it's a really, really important ditch. So the canal begins construction in 1817 to 1825, and we're talking about 363 miles of digging a ditch that's 40 feet wide and 4 feet deep through limestone and the Appalachian Mountains. And this is before any type of steam power, any type of electricity. So we're talking about like people, horses, and water. That's pretty much it. The other problem is that there's an elevation of land between Albany, where the canal is built, and Buffalo, where it ends, right on Lake Erie. And of course the concept, if you haven't got that, is if you can get a boat from the Atlantic Ocean to the Great Lakes, then from the Great Lakes you can go into all different parts of the interior of the Mississippi River. You really can connect the interior with the Atlantic seaboard. So it's going to connect Albany from Buffalo, and then from Albany you have the Hudson River that flows down to New York City, which means that New York City is going to be, a big time winner. But the other problem, like I was mentioning, is 565 feet elevation from Albany to Buffalo. So you have to build locks. They end up building 36 locks that elevate, I believe, like 15 feet at a time. So slowly as boats go on the canal and they hit a lock, they're going to be raised up in kind of increments. And so by the time that they get to Lockport in Buffalo, they're going to be on level with Lake Erie. So this darn thing is going to work. So what are we talking about? Well, we're talking about really 8 years of digging this ditch, and then it's going to open. And then we're going to go over the effects, kids.
Marshall, Will, and Holly on a routine expedition.
All right, let's go over the major effects. And, I can't emphasize enough that if you're doing anything that deals with economy or transportation in terms of a history essay, you can bring in the Erie Canal and that thing is going to nail it home. But there are some big, huge effects. The number one effect is going to be the reduction in transportation costs. It's going to reduce the cost of traveling with goods 95%. That's a humongous deal. So this is, in a sense, really going to be one of the engines of the Industrial Revolution, traveling back and forth from the interior to the Atlantic Ocean. We also have an immigration effect because we're going to have tons of mainly Irish and some Germans. They're going to be building this canal. They're going to populate the interior sections of New York and start to really kind of have this, manifest destiny, westward expansion concept that starts going with that immigrant population. And later, a lot of that immigrant population, by the way, is going to build New York City. So that's important to say as well. You also have this idea of really creating not only a commercial center of the United States. It's not going to be Philly. Sorry, Billy. It ain't going to be Baltimore. It's New York City. Right? There's no coincidence that Wall Street's in New York City because that's the commercial center of the United States, the economic heartbeat. And that begins with the Erie Canal. The other effect is going to be that it's going to affect trade relations with England. Great Britain, I'm sorry, said England. Great Britain is going to repeal what were called the Corn Laws, which were basically tariffs that penalized, any grain coming in from the United States. So now that it's profitable, and now that a, Ohio farmer from Cleveland can grow grain and get it to London, London with the Queen, that's a huge deal. So it's going to have a beneficial relationship on trade and economy, but also that relationship that is starting to grow between Great Britain and the United States. You also have this idea that because railroads at the same time are starting to be built, that you have a competition system, a competition between the canals, traveling on the canals with your goods or putting them on the railroad. That's going to drive down costs even more. But I think that those are really the big ideas, guys, that this is a huge economic change for the United States, a transportation change, and really kind of, reformulating the kind of hexagon of power in the United States for years to come. I said hexagon of powers. All right, guys, that's it for the learning on the YouTubes on the Erie Canal, 363 miles, 40 feet wide, 4 feet deep. And by the time that thing opens, it's going to be a celebration that goes crazy. So make sure if you haven't subscribed to Hip Hughes History, guys, you press that big red button where you'll fly through the internet and subscribe for free. And I just feel so slimy when I ask. All right, guys, we'll see you next time. That you press my buttons. I always say it where attention goes.